Big Ten and the SEC have launched Challenge Week between the two in volleyball, women's volleyball to be exact. I know there's a lot of people that have been excited about something like this possibly happening with football or with basketball coming up. And while that's still a possibility, I don't think this is a sign of like a Big Ten SEC football challenge quickly approaching or anything like that. But it is good news for the two conferences to show some cohesiveness, the ability to work together, especially with them being able to hopefully work together to give us some better out-of-conference matchups and things like that. Not to say that they haven't had good out-of-conference matchups, but it's one of the things you love most about college athletics when it comes to the conference wars is the out-of-conference matchups. Of course, we'd love to see them in the NCAA tournament, in the college football playoffs and stuff like that, but early on in the season, Ohio State, Texas last season to start the season was so cool. Michigan, Oklahoma has so much hype around it as well. And we get those matchups again this year. So you love to see that kind of stuff. In a release from the NCAA, they said as part of the Big Ten SEC Challenge Week, as they're calling it, all 18 Big Ten schools and all 16 SEC institutions, I don't know why their institutions are worse schools. I don't know about that. Will match up beginning Tuesday, September 1st, culminating with the historic outdoor doubleheader at Wrigley Field on Sunday, September 6th. So really, making a whole lot out of this to try and make this a really big thing. Obviously, getting it at Wrigley Field, doing stuff like that. Wrigley Field has been kind to Big Ten athletics to be able to get teams in there and playing, whether it's been football, now it's volleyball. Really cool to see that kind of stuff happening. But to see this type of thing happen here, it's really encouraging for those who want to see the Big Ten and the SEC play more out-of-conference matchups. Now, it is only volleyball. I get that. But I do want to kind of pump the brakes here a little bit. I know this is not like the best news in the world for some people. Some people want to be like, great Big Ten football news, great Big Ten basketball news. And while it can be that, I also don't think people should get their hopes up too much that it's like, oh yeah, the Big Ten's got a Big Ten SEC challenge cooking up. They're getting ready to announce a week from tomorrow or anything like that. I don't think that's happening. Now, I would be lying if I didn't think that we would see more from this eventually. But right now, it's so much more difficult to get things scheduled quickly for football, right? Football scheduling is so rigid. The way they work things out, the 9-game conference schedule at the SEC just moved to the SEC is apparently prioritizing out-of-conference Power 4 matchups. The Big Ten is not prioritizing that as they've not made that something that teams have to do. And it doesn't look like they're going to do anything like that. So it does look like teams in the Big Ten are going to prioritize more of the not traveling as much in the out of conference, obviously with USC not having Notre Dame happen. That was evident there, especially with it being later on in the season. I think, sounds like if USC and Notre Dame were able to play earlier in the season, they might have made it happen. But again, that's something we could totally rehash at a different time, part of it here. But I do think that's one of the biggest things that makes it more difficult for football to be able to have the Big Ten SEC challenge, especially to have it as quickly, right? I mean, volleyball is setting this up to start this happening in, what is it? It's March right now. It's going to be April soon. You're looking at half a year until September. And they're already being able to set up something like this. Football would never be able to set up something like this within half a year. So, I mean, I'm not saying that we won't get an announcement of it happening in 2028 or anything like that, but it's not going to be happening in this upcoming season or the season after that anytime soon. I mean, like I said, maybe you get something like 2028, 2029, but there'd have to be some quick decisions to be made on that. And I think they're probably going to want to see how it plays out in the volleyball sense here. And they'll probably test it with some other, sports first, right? They'll probably do something like softball next, as softball is becoming bigger for the Big Ten and the SEC. Obviously, it's big there. They won't do anything like hockey. Obviously, the SEC is not super into hockey or anything like that. Maybe wrestling or something. We'll see. I mean, the Big Ten dominates wrestling, so it wouldn't be all that big of a thing. The SEC has some good wrestling programs. I don't think it sounds like they're just a complete downer there. But overall, this is a situation where I think you'll probably see the Big Ten do this with like another kind of not major sport, like maybe a softball, maybe a baseball or something like that. And then maybe see it happen with basketball and then football or something like that, just because of how long it does take to get these things to happen. I mean, we could see something like this with basketball relatively soon with the schedules and stuff. But of course, you do have the television and the revenue misalignment here as well. The Big Ten, obviously, their primary partners of Fox, CBS, NBC and the SEC's primary partners of ESPN and ABC. And I've talked about this, with how Fox and the Big Ten doesn't want to be sending their teams to play on ESPN and ABC as much because they're already sending them to play, in the college football playoffs and stuff like that over there. They're not seeing any of this revenue, right? It's one of the big reasons why there is a little bit of the unsureness about Ohio State and Alabama. Sounds like that matchup is going to happen now, so that's probably bodes better news for the possibility of something like this happening with the Big Ten SEC Challenge. But it's also one of those situations where we know this is something that the TV companies do not want to see happen. You do not want to continue to see Ohio State be shipped off to play in ESPN, even though it does look like that could possibly happen. You don't want to continue to see Michigan shipped off to ESPN. Excuse me, because quite frankly, the Fox and CBS and NBC makes more money from Ohio State playing Ball State than they do from seeing Ohio State not play on their screen at all. Now, you get good enough matchups, and maybe you could convince the companies that, like, hey, if we get every single Big Ten team to play every single SEC team, you get half of those matchups every year. I'm sure they would structure that out in such a way that, like, okay, Ohio State plays at home one season, so Fox gets them, and then Michigan plays at home one season, away one season, so then ESPN gets them or something like that. Like, there would have to be a whole lot of working together here, and that's really one of the reasons why you probably won't see this happen anytime soon for football. Now, does it mean it won't happen at all? No, of course not. I think this is great news for something like this eventually happening in basketball for sure, but also the possibility of it happening in football as well, because you're seeing these two conferences work together more. I also think we probably need to see the conference, not the conference, the college football playoffs expand before we see anything like this happen, just because it does seem like, and I talked about this before with the 2014 playoff, which I know nobody wants, right? I'm one of the only people out here that's like, it's actually kind of a good idea, but I get it. And nobody wants it because they see the 24 and they just think it's far too many teams. I get it. I won't get on my soapbox here with it, but I do think that in a 2014 playoff environment, you have more opportunities for more teams to be able to get in. You can lose 2 or 3 games. You could lose possibly even 4 games and get into the 24 team playoff. I think Iowa last year would have still made the playoff, and they would have been like number 23 or 24. And they had 3 or 4 losses last season. Why am I blanking on this? Right? That's right. 4 losses. They lost to Iowa State, Indiana, Oregon, and USC. And that would have been a team that got into the 2014 playoffs last season in Iowa. So you could even see a team like, Ohio State lose 4 games and probably still get into the playoffs. Maybe even a team like Ohio State lose 5 games and still get into the playoff, which, granted, nobody really wants to see that. I get that, but we're just looking at it realistically. That is something that would give the team some more kind of cushion to be able to say, okay, maybe we can play Alabama at a conference. Maybe Georgia can play Michigan at a conference or something like that. Or Indiana can play Ole Miss or, LSU or something like that. Boy, I'd love to see Indiana LSU this season. That would be awesome to see something like that happen. Maybe we'll get that in the playoffs. Let's cross our fingers and hope we get that. Indiana versus LSU. Boy, I think Kirk-Cinetti would just tear Lane Kiffin apart. I might have him crying over there on the sidelines after that one. Anyway, I don't mean to say that Kirk-Cinetti is going to make a grown man cry, but it could happen. I think you're with me here that could that could definitely happen. So the television stuff does make it more difficult. And you never know what's going on with the leadership stuff, right? I mean, a lot of people say that the Big Ten and SEC don't get along, but we've also got indications of them getting along at times. So I do think this gets us closer. Volleyball proves that collaboration between the two conferences and out-of-conference play is possible. The conference schedules and the philosophy are converging here more. You're going to see these two groups working together. And so I think just what you want to see here, if you do want to see something like this happen in football and basketball, you want to see this renewed for the year after this, right? You want to see softball. You want to see baseball. You want to see wrestling. So, sports like that, you want to see more of these Big Ten SEC challenges happening, and that will obviously give you more confidence. And I think if we see this happen in basketball, I don't think we'll get it in basketball and football announced at the same time. I don't think I could see that happening, but who knows, if it goes really well, they might. But I think if you see this happen in basketball, if you see kind of a Big Ten SEC challenge or something like that, I think that's going to bode really well for something like this eventually happening in college football as well. And if we're just being honest, Tony Petitti needs to give in a little bit more if he wants something like this to happen. Tony Petitti, he's a businessman. He knows what he wants, and he will do whatever he has to do to get it. Kind of made the SEC think, well, if you go to the 9-game conference schedule, then we'll be fine with a 12-team playoffs, or we'll be fine with a 16-team playoff. And what's the line in draft day where it's like, we live in a different world than we did 5 minutes ago. That's what I imagine Tony Petitti doing the Greg Sankey. We live in a different world than we did 5 seconds ago, or something like that. Which is kind of a jerk move, but also at the same time, it's like, okay, it's a good business move. So I get it here a little bit. Anyway, I am rambling at this point. What are your thoughts on a possible Big Ten versus SEC challenge? I think bottom line of this whole thing is that volleyball is proof of concept that there is a bridge for this happening. Football remains years away, logistics, TV money, all that stuff, but the gap is visibly narrowing with every joint announcement and commissioner handshake that goes on. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below.